Welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking a look at source material that is literally going to transform how you look through your camera lens. We're going to merge two incredibly powerful approaches. On one hand, we have the artistic, conservation-driven vision of legendary National Geographic photographer Frans Lanting, and on the other, the highly technical, battle-tested field mastery of Jim Harmer. By blending these two distinct styles together, we're going to explore exactly how you can elevate your wildlife photography from, just basic snapshots to truly immersive storytelling. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's just dive right in. Capturing a dramatic, split-second encounter, like a massive pair of bighorn sheep clashing, is definitely not about luck. Seriously, it's not. It's this unique blend of science, art, and a whole lot of extreme patience. It requires you to anticipate the action, perfectly execute your technical settings on the fly, and somehow still keep an eye on your artistic composition.
Here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We'll be looking at defeating the studio effect, the art of the approach, angles and drama, the pursuit of pin sharpness, freezing action, and finally, mastering wild lighting.
Section 1. Defeating the studio effect and avoiding that dreaded snapshot trap. Let's go ahead and identify the core villain that holds so many beginner photographers back from capturing true drama in their work.
It's a really critical question we have to ask ourselves. Why do some wildlife photos grab our emotions instantly, while others honestly just look like they belong on a mundane flyer for a local zoo? What is missing there?
Well, Jim Harmer defines this recurring villain as the cheap studio effect. It's basically the wildlife equivalent of going to one of those department store portrait studios and taking a photo against a cheesy blue background. It happens when photographers completely fail to include the surrounding environment. So to defeat this, your goal is to totally transport the viewer in time and place, totally immersing them in the animal's actual habitat. And a massive weapon against that villain is achieving perfect eye focus with specular highlights, which are also known as catchlights. You know that bright little spot of light reflected in an animal's eye? That reflection gives us a really strong visual cue for the shape of the eye and where it is relative to the sun. It instantly takes a flat, two-dimensional photo and gives it real, three-dimensional depth and life.
Section 2. The art of the approach, focusing on stealth and ethics. If we want to capture authentic behaviors and those really intimate details the way Frans Lanting famously does, we absolutely have to master getting close, both ethically and invisibly.
So the crucial takeaway here is preparing for the encounter by deliberately following 3 precise stealth steps. First up, mask your human scent. Wash your clothes in water without detergent and use a cover scent, because animals like bears and deer rely incredibly heavily on their sense of smell. Second, wear camouflage. Even if the animal is colorblind, camo is super effective at breaking up the human silhouette. And third, never, ever walk straight at an animal. You want to walk slowly in a zigzag pattern so they don't feel directly threatened by your approach.
Whether you're patiently tracking a fox through the snow or stalking a bear in Idaho, Harmer warns that you must be constantly ready for a sudden encounter. He actually missed the shot of a lifetime in Idaho because a mother bear charged him completely out of nowhere before his camera was ready. He literally had to drop it and use bear spray instead of his shutter. So, always keep your camera silenced, use live view to minimize mirror noise, and just be prepared for action at any given second.
Section 3. Angles, composition, and drama, or framing the wild. Let's look at how our physical positioning and our framing can completely alter the emotional power of a photograph. Now think about the psychological impact of angles. When a beginner shoots from a spanning height, just looking down, it's kind of like portrait photography. Shooting downward inadvertently makes your subject look small, feminine, and a bit dainty. But if you shift to a professional mindset, actually getting low to the ground, right down into their dramatic world, you instantly give that animal immense power and presence in the frame. Plus, while the classic rule of thirds is totally standard for about 95% of your shots, sometimes you just have to break the rules to maximize drama. Placing an animal dead center in your frame during a direct, two-eyed stare down creates a really uniquely powerful connection. The viewer is suddenly placed right in direct opposition to the wild, locking eyes with the subject. It is so impactful. Section 4. The pursuit of pin sharpness, mastering micro-contrast. Let's see how to achieve absolutely flawless image clarity. Because in this game, your images can't just be tack sharp, they literally need to be pin sharp.
You see, proper long lens technique is a lot like shooting a rifle. The absolute slightest breathing or vibration is going to ruin a shot taken from hundreds of yards away. That means stability is everything. Please do not put a $5,000 lens on an $80 tripod. Use high-quality support or a heavy beanbag if you're shooting from a vehicle.
Go for prime glass over zoom lenses for better sharpness, avoid those cheap teleconverters that just rob you of light and clarity, and always, always use your camera's lens micro-adjustment feature to calibrate your specific lens to your specific camera body.
Let's get slightly scientific for a second. Sharpness really boils down to two things: acutance, which is rendering hard edges without any bleeding, and microcontrast, which is the ability to render the absolute finest details. If you want to know if your lens has good microcontrast, just zoom way in on your photos. Do the individual hairs, feathers, and eyelashes blur together into some gray smudge, or do they stand out perfectly distinct from one another? That's the real test.
Section 5. Freezing and painting action, focusing on speed and motion. Once your setup is perfectly sharp, you have to precisely master your camera's focus tracking and shutter speeds if you want to capture the frantic, rapid-fire struggle for survival out there.
To freeze fast-moving action, you are going to need extremely high shutter speeds. I mean, look at this. Capturing a hummingbird in flight requires a staggering 1/8,000th of a second. And you really can't rely on basic, outdated autofocus for this. You've got to use AI servo or continuous focus, which actively predicts where your subject is going. Also, pro tip, use brief burst shooting. If you hold that shutter down too early, your camera's buffer is going to fill up and lock you out right as the actual peak action happens.
So here we have two totally different methods for capturing motion. On one side, we're freezing sudden, violent action, like a bear catching a salmon, using those super high shutter speeds. But on the other side, for smoother, more graceful subjects, we use a very different technique called panning. By dropping down to a slow shutter speed, like around 1/25th of a second, and swinging your lens to perfectly track the animal's eye, the subject stays sharp while the background just melts into this beautiful, creative motion blur.
Finally, Section 6, Mastering Wild Lighting and Taming the Elements. This is all about understanding how to leverage and control both natural ambient light and artificial flash out in the wild. Make no mistake, lighting is the ultimate divider between an average photo and a masterpiece. To really emulate Frans Lanting's artistic eye, you have to learn how to leverage natural directional light. Wild animals are not going to pose for you, right? So you have to predict where the light will be. For example, positioning yourself on the east side of a river right at sunrise ensures your subjects are beautifully front-lit. That is exactly how you capture those gorgeous, fiery oranges and lush tones Lanting is famous for, all without disturbing the authenticity of the natural scene.
But, of course, sometimes you encounter an animal right in the middle of the day, and nature's light produces these terribly harsh, distracting shadows. In those moments, professionals use fill flash. Now, since you're usually far away, you need a tool called a better beamer. It's essentially an extender that uses a Fresnel lens to magnify and project your flash up to 10 times further. It reaches across vast distances to just gently fill in those shadows and completely save the image.
But here is a very surprising and potentially very expensive word of caution. Jim Harmer explicitly notes that you must always remove that Fresnel lens when you aren't actively shooting. The sun's magnification through that piece of plastic is so intense it can literally melt a penny in a matter of seconds. It will absolutely effortlessly melt a hole right through your $500 flash unit if you aren't paying attention, so keep that in mind.
Ultimately, blending Harmer's technical execution, getting that pin-sharp focus and perfect exposure, with Lanting's deep focus on intimate storytelling and environmental texture is what allows you to beautifully transport the viewer. You aren't just snapping a picture of an animal anymore, you're bringing the viewer directly into that animal's wild, untamed world.
So, the final thought I want to leave you with today, before you pack up your gear and head out into the field, is this. Every animal out there, from a tiny gopher to a massive grizzly bear, is locked in a daily struggle for survival. When you look through that viewfinder, ask yourself, what is this animal afraid of? And how will your next photograph tell their captivating story?